Righty-ho. Wow, Alison, absolutely right. Am I on? Am I nearly on? Let's get this show on the road. Yes! Tuesday night, cheese night, and look. Cheese. We get carried away with the whole coolness of cheese, the detail of cheese, the nerdishness of cheese, the history of cheese, the provenance of cheese, the variety of cheese, the very cheesiness of cheese. But I thought tonight we'd just talk about cheese. I've got 10 cheeses in front of me, 10 cheeses. Some great, some testing, some interesting, quite a lot of ones you're going to know, some from the Academy of Cheese Level 1. I don't know if you're going to point out the mimolette there, one of my most interesting cheeses from a production point of view. But I just want to talk tonight, about putting it on a cheese board. Matching is a wonderful thing. I really enjoyed that perfect match. And in fact, tonight I've got a cheese, the Formidon Bear in front of me, that was one of the best matches I've ever had when I had it with a never eat shredded wheat, Eastern Loire white wine, slightly sweet. So I really believe in matching. And I really believe that we should really try hard to make cheese shine and do that thing. But we also have to remember, bluntly, just making sure you can hear me. Can someone just say they can hear me? Can everyone hear me? Does someone on the screen just say they can hear me? Please say you can hear me. Oh, that's interesting. Right, well, we plugged in the right. For those watching, can you hear me? Yes, we can. Oh, that makes me feel better. Sorry. Moment of self-doubt. Don't do that, Charlie. Just keep pressing on. Okay, right. So where we were, cheese. Awesome. So how do we actually eat cheese? How do we actually eat cheese? Yes, we snack on it. There's that. We used to talk in Shaftesbury about the cheese fairy that would be there at sort of 6 o'clock. You'd never see them, but you put a cheese out when you got back from work, and within 20 minutes, it's just gone. The cheese is gone. And then there's the lunch cheeses. We love that. And then there are wonderful ways to bring cheeses into meal. But the one that we all kind of talk about is the cheese board, the end of the meal, that moment when you can relax, and actually you can take as much time over the cheese board as you can over the rest of the meal. You know, you sit down at 8 or something and you have your starter and your main course and your glass of wine and all that kind of, and you kick into that cheese board maybe after dessert at, I don't know, 9:30, and you're still there at midnight. It's an extremely lengthy, wonderful affair when the best of conversation comes out and a fourth bottle of wine. But it's not about matching. It's not about, what's the right phrase here? It's about pleasure, the pleasure of cheese, the pleasure of wine, the pleasure of company, the pleasure of not having anything else to wine at, to focus just briefly on only what's going on in the room. So I've decided tonight to talk about how to make a cheese board for that moment. The moment when perfection is not what we're looking for. It's complex, awesome comfort where you relax. So I would like you to ask me lots of questions about cheese board, and if I don't have the answer, I hope someone else will kick on. But let's go. So I've got 5 top tips for how to have a good cheese board. Set the scene. It's dark. Maybe it's winter and you've got some wine left over from the main course. You could have a nice bottle of port or something you're planning to open, but most of the time we don't, do we? You know, we bring on through. So the cheese board, pretty much, as much as we always say not every cheese goes with red wine, at that moment, it's got to be red wine compatible in most occasions. So what do we want to see when the landlord or the landlady or the cook or whoever's going on brings that cheese to the table? We want the wow factor. We want proper extraordinary cheeses. We want different colors. We don't want different shapes. We want gooiness. We want big masculine chunks of cheese like that. And we want delicate finery, awesome kind of allure that you get from subtle little chappies like that or something like that. We want a little bit of, oh my God, has it gone too far? You know, we like that kind of stuff. And we also want to see a little bit of home comforts. We don't want to be over surprised. If you've got a group of 4, 6, 8, 10 people at Christmas, maybe something like that, there's going to be a person who doesn't really know that's what they complex stuff, you know, just give them a bit of cheddar. Father-in-law's like that. If you're listening, Les, hi there, by the way. You know, wants a little bit of stability in the corner, something he knows he's going to like. So spread your MPM, to use an Academy of Cheese word. We want to see lots of different types of make. We want to see lots of different types of post-make. We want visual creativity. It's got a good smell, all the better. So first impressions, let them buy with their eyes, be impactful. Number 1. That's Charlie T's top tip. Okay, so I think my cheese in front of me has got some impact. Look at this chap. This is the mimolette, as previously discussed. That's a cheese rind made with cheese mite. Cheese mite, those tiny little spiders, they don't eat cheese, and I'm sure you know. They eat mold, but they garden cheeses. This thing, whole, looks like a cannonball. One of its nicknames is the Boule de Lille. The Boule de Lille. No one's going to know that. Good first impression. I whipped out my straw. We saw this with Rupert from Brindisa. Talk about the straw. Stuff like that really matters. I've already picked up my overly ripe, rusty camembert. That's the kind of thing we want to see. Make sure your cheese has visual appeal. Remember, it's highly likely many of your guests are going to be a little drunk. Just saying. So, you know. Right. Top tip number 2. Partners in complexity. Dun, dun, dun. What on earth is partners in complexity? If you, and we'll start tasting in a second, if you put 2 cheeses on there where one is substantially more complex than another, the one that is not complex is going to feel like that wallflower, the one that no one wants to dance with. You know, it's, you know, maybe his breath smells, or he's got his dress on backwards or something like that. He's just not going to have it. And I've got one here, right? So I've got Sparacas, one of Valo von Mullenen's Gruyere styles, Alpine styles. Very nice. Not as old as some of his other stuff, so we're talking about a 12-month here. It's got that kind of rubbery kind of feel to it, like good Gruyere. Got a few holes. It's creamy. It's got its balance of sweet, salt, and savory. And you let it come up, and it got a sweet start, a rising savory. But you get into there and you get tones of, and this is not a negative, almost like little rubber tones, wood smoke tones, malty tones, maybe even a little bit of dried straw tones, and some things in the animal fermented section. So there's a fermentation element. Really interesting, complex cheese, but beautifully laid out on a sweet cream kind of bed, a solid, simple flavor bed with this complex on that. I'll pop over here. That's really good. And have a look at this cheddar. Now, I'm not going to name it, but it's out of a packet. It's not Cathedral City. Just going to say that. Sort of it's a weight. Oh shit! It's a supermarket own brand. And compared to that, all we're going to get, all I am getting, is fat and salt. Now, if I had this on its own at lunchtime or something like that, I would get more nuance from it. But when you have a cheese as complex and nutritious as one sitting next to this, this one just doesn't stand up. I am not a cheese snob. I love this cheese. It's in my fridge for a reason. It's very useful for me. I do a lot of things with it. But it's not a good cheese board choice. Just going to say. Just got some on our wall of cheese. Well done, Claire. It is an astonishing cheese, isn't it? And I'm going to slip in a top tip on this one. Right. This is not one of my big points, but I want to slip this in. This cheese is slow to the palate. Okay. So if you want to make this work for you, slither is going to be better than a chunk. So put it on your mouth. In fact, I've almost cut that tooth out. allowing the moisture that you need to bring to the thing and the warmth to come out of it. At that point, the flavor is going to release. So this cheese can, and it's just not true, it can appear not so tasty because it's just slow to develop in the mouth. So as a good cheese moment when you are bringing people the cheese board, it might be good to put a cheese grater, not cheese grater, a shaver on here, or cut some slices, or maybe even serve it cut. Don't be afraid to do that. Of course, it's got the issues with what happens if it's some leftover, and if it's a big cheese you can put, but little slices like this. Wainsbury's or Wesco's. Little slices are going to access the palate more easily. So don't be afraid to cut your cheeses to maximize their impact in the mouth. Very good, brown. It's really interesting cheese. Right, where were we? Partners in complexity. Top tip number 2. Top tip number 3. Crowd pleasers. Now, call me shameless, call me practical. I've done a lot of hours behind the counter talking to customers, and there's just that moment where they've got people coming to dinner and there might be someone who doesn't really know their cheese. Don't embarrass them. What's the point? They're there as your guest, be nice. So make sure on your cheese board there is something that someone who is not a cheese lover is going to enjoy. It's not complex, it's polite. So make sure that it's easy. Now, I used to have some go-to cheeses for that, and some of them are quite complex. They just don't come across as what's the word? They don't overly. Come to me in a second, but it's just they're not. They won't put someone down. There's a cheese called Montagnolo, right? It's the older brother of Cambozola. It's produced by some big factory in Germany, but it's just the most accessible blue cheese I know. Okay, so if you want people to enjoy it, then it's just so easy. It also won the World Cheese Awards, coming first and second in 2013. So before we think that Cambozola brothers are not so good, it beat some of the best judges in the world. This cheese, formed on Bear, is also a beautiful crowd pleaser. I have to say, from a perspective of it looking on the cheese board, the roundness really works for me. All these little caverns and holes with the mold developing in them. So this is an Auvergne cheese. I mean, that is a thing of beauty. In fact, that central eye looks like it's actually looking at you down the lens. Hello. So this is one that people will just love. So I'm going to have some now. Now, I probably should have let this warm up a fraction more, because when it's warm, the paste really goes right across your tongue. Relax them. Now, also at the wrong temperature, and this is a good example, it's not just the flavors are more accessible, but they can be out of balance. And this one is coming across a little salty. We're at another 3-4 degrees. It won't. Right. That's obviously top tip. It's not on my cheese board, choose names, but in presentation wise, totally essential to send it out at room temperature. Don't let it sit out on the sideboard in your dining room for those big dinner nights or a hot kitchen, because once they pack over 23 degrees or something like that, the cheeses will decline. So as much as it looks beautiful to have people to walk in and have dinner with you with a cheese board on the side, if you think your room is going to become too warm, too much good times being had, lots of bodies getting warm, keep the cheese board somewhere cooler during the day. So put a crowd pleaser on the board. Make sure there's something for everyone. Right. Next thing, matching to wine. This is the big one. You are not going to, if you have 5 cheeses on a cheese board, you're not having 5 wines. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it's extremely fun to do, And on occasions when we put 5 wines on the table, maybe 4 wines of beer, whatever goes right with it, with your cheeses, what you've matched perfectly. A lot of raucousness. But bottom line is you're almost certainly to go into your cheese board with just one drink. Now, we have this theory of friends, lovers, and enemies, where friends is where the cheese is neutral against what you're drinking. You get a bit of both. Now, I've got a Mualenga here. Mualenga, my pronunciation of it. Now, I was tasting this earlier. Goat's milk, traditionally not a red wine drink. It looks really cool though, has its little straw. Very nice. Why don't you put it on the cheese board? Why? Because that's disgusting. It's wrong, right? I'm getting acid. I'm thinking of Tipex thinner, you know, those kind of things are heading into the back of the throat, and that's just wrong. It's letting the cheese down. What will happen is your guests at your dinner party will just think that's a disgusting cheese. It's not a cheese fault. It's awesome. It's absolutely fantastic. It's just not there for it. So make sure you've got no howlers around your cheese board. And if it's a cheese you think is better with white wine, but you're drinking red, don't do it. Put it down. It's a really good cheese as long as you're not having that. So don't check for howlers. That's very important. Now, last up is this tricky business of terroir. Terroir is not what people think it is, right? It's not the south face of the hill with the wind from the west and the kind of thing. That is part of terroir, but that's like this bit of terroir. And terroir is much bigger than that. Terroir is the history, it's the culture, it's the sociology, it's 20 generations of housewives choosing foods and drinks that go together and encouraging the right things to be made in the right way and paired in the right way. That's terroir. It's a big cultural as well as geographic and agricultural issue. Now, which means that cheeses from the same area are going to work together, because otherwise someone would have changed the recipe or nudged it in a different direction. Standalone excellence that has no context rarely, if ever, occurs. So it's something there. So when you're thinking of putting together a cheese board, if you can stay within the region, that's going to work. And I would argue that staying within country. So if you're thinking to yourself, 3 cheeses, soft, blue, hard, right? Go British or go French. You're more likely to get a coherence onto your board. Even though the terroir of the whole of Britain is very different, you're still going to get a cheddar, a Stilton, and say a Tunworth or something like that being a better mix than drawing in a Cantal or a Gruyere into that space, because there's a clash and that'll confuse the taste buds of your team, and they won't have that homogeneous gelling on the cheese board that you're going to get around the table and everyone's enjoying themselves. So that is my 5 top tips for a practical cheese board, an essential cheese board, a cheese board that is part of the journey, not excessive focus on the cheese itself, but fits into your community and your dinner. So 1, spread the look, spread the light, make it look beautiful, variety on your board. 2, partners in complexity. Try and have cheeses equally complex across the board. We don't want something excessively complex, it'll be lost. We don't want an excessively dull or simple. I don't mean dull in a rude word, but some simple one, because it'll feel like the poor relation. So partners in complexity. Number 3, always have a crowd pleaser. You need to please everyone in the room. Make sure in there's going to be an awesome tasting cheese that's just fun to have. Number 4, look for howlers with your drink. Make sure there aren't any. Make sure that you're not pairing the wine of your choice, your red wine, up with a goat's cheese by accident and it tastes awful. Look for no howlers. And number 5, try and follow a little bit of terroir. You don't have to, it's not essential, but it's more likely to give a cohesion into your cheese board in flavor terms than if you go wild all over the place. Cool. Right. I've got some top tips here, but I actually see that Nigel's popped in. Nigel Barden is going to talk to us a little bit about the virtual Cheese Awards, which is coming up. But also, I know that he's got some stories about judging and how cheeses interact in judging. So I'm going to come on to that in a second. But I think he's just sorting himself out. Are you there, Nigel? You going to nod? Oh, he's checking his hair in the mirror. Okay, let's see that. Let's embarrass him early. Come on, bring it on. Has he got any hair left? Let me get
Oh my goodness! Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can very well. I'm assuming everyone else can, so that's good. Right, we've got some questions coming in, but it's good to see you, Nigel. We're going to talk a bit about the virtual Cheese Awards, aren't we? So
yeah, it's going to take place a week on Saturday. So and it's going to be just again championing the profession and all the people in it.
Yeah, you're running at about 5 seconds behind your mouth and your ears are having, but let's just roll with that. So the virtual Cheese Awards are happening because basically all the competitions have stopped because of this thing called COVID. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's been interrupting some people's business.
A little bit. It's it's been a very tough time. We know about that. We had the Great British Cheese Weekend not long ago, and because of that, it's ongoing. We are eating more cheese, hallelujah, in Britain, but we've got to keep on with that, and we've got to champion some of our smaller producers. By the way, I've got a really good example about Mario Olianos in Leeds, in Adel. This is his Leeds Blue. There you go, Pecorino. So this is made from the sheep just about 3 or 4 miles away from his business in Adel, and he's been making this all the time. He didn't have to dry his sheep off. It's been great. He's continued. This is his blue. He does a normal pecorino. He does a very fresh ricotta. So here you go again. And from the way
he does a non-blue.
Yeah, he does a blue.
He does a non-blue pecorino, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's the non-blue there.
It's amazing. This is a bloke who's making sheep's cheese in the middle of Leeds. I think he started in his garage. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, he's Sardinian. His dad's a Sardinian fisherman. He was born in Austria. His mum's Austrian, but grew up in Sardinia. Came over here 20 years ago to learn a bit of English. Ended up in Leeds on a language course. Fell in love with my Yorkshire lass, who's actually his mum and dad happen to be from Poland.
Right.
But they make these brilliant cheeses. And again, a lot of it's been sold through Andy Swinscoe at Courtyard Dairy, and they've managed to keep going. And it's just a great story. So people like that's what we're going to be doing with the virtual Cheese Awards. It's going to be from 11 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. There's going to be all the different classes: soft, blue, artisan. But in amongst that, and speaking to the judges, there's going to be a little bit of footage. There's going to be a panel. You're going to be involved, so we're going to be talking
I'm
to you.
In a panel somewhere.
Yeah, and the idea is to make it as entertaining and as fun as possible. So it's not just going to be watching people taste cheese, because to be honest, that wouldn't really sustain you for 5.5 hours. So there's going to be a lot of maybe 3. But
you're asking people to log in, aren't you? And there's a competition which we will put on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, which means if you log in, you get a bunch of cheeses sent to you, which are hopefully some of the best and award winners. I'm not quite sure what they're going to be, but it's a big box of free cheese. What's not to like? Yeah,
we are. And people behind it, Sarah DeWitt, who has her own business now, but she was involved with Asda for a long time, and she was, she was the cheese person there, the Grand Fromage in every sense. And she's got together with Nigel Pooley and White's Farm
of White Farm.
Yeah. They're 2 very seasoned people in the business, and they've done this. And I thought, when I heard of it, I thought, what a great idea. But let's make it a fun, entertaining day. Let's do some awards online. But again, highlight the scenario of how consumers can eat more, but speak to some of the cheesemongers, the cheese producers, people like Sam Wilkin, the Cellarman Sam. And I've already interviewed him because I've been back. This is day 2 of Great Taste Awards and in their offices in Borough Market. Yesterday I was tasting cider. Today I've been tasting beer. You can tell it probably by my visage, and it's been a good day. But yesterday, Sam Wilkin, whose brother used to be my producer on the Simon Mayo show at Radio 2. How about that for a small world? And also, they're both very good cricketers. He's... Yeah, I know. There you go. But best things in life. Starting tomorrow, the cricket, West Indies. How exciting.
Okay, this cheese program. Cheese. Come back to the cheese. Come back to the cheese. Okay, so basically you're here to tell us that we need to log in and follow the virtual cheese awards, which as far as we're aware is the only place where the best cheeses of 2020 are getting any love. So we're going to follow that. We're going to put the links out and let everyone think.
Yeah. Now, Jeremy Bowen's involved as well. Old Jezza.
Good. I haven't seen him yet, so Jeremy, if you're there, pop up. Now I wanted to ask you some questions because we talked a bit about matching cheese, and of course the ultimate cheese board is a competition where you've, in some cases, I mean, I think they're going to have about 300 cheeses, British cheeses, for the virtual cheese awards, but a big competition like Nantwich or the World Cheese Awards, we're talking about 3,000. So I'm going to pop you some questions. I want to see if you can come back to me. How do you keep one cheese from interfering with your judgment of the next cheese, to use the phrase, clear the palate?
Yeah, I think the key is to make sure that the order that you taste, I mean, ideally you should have a rough idea which of the stronger ones, leave those towards the end, go for the milder, taste your way through. Sometimes just nose them as well if you're not sure. This is the most sensitive organ in the body, 10,000 nasal receptors. You lose your sense of smell, you've got nothing. So go with that, try and get them in order. But then it's always really important to cleanse your palate after each cheese that you've tasted it. And as you and I well know, you smell the cheese, but when you might put your cheese iron in and take a sample out, you bore a piece out, depending what the cheese is. If it's a big round truckle, you tend to do that. You put a plug back in so it won't dry it out. But have a look at it, see how it looks. What's its texture like? What does it crumble? What does it smell like? And then you can take some and run it between your fingers, and then you can just see how much moisture is in there. But before each time, I never drink water when I'm tasting cheese. It's always either apple juice or something with a bit of acidity, or I eat pieces of apple as well. That's really key. You've got to keep your palate in trim, and you need the acidity to cut through the cheese, which is a dairy product, and it could easily get clagged up, as we say where I'm from in the north.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I mean, take the Mimolette here, or in fact the Stonehouse. It can get lodged in your teeth, which sounds like a small issue, but actually that could completely undermine the next cheese that you're tasting.
Yes, it's something you've got to really bear in mind and just look after yourself. But apple juice and apples are really good just to keep keep you fresh, and because you can get quite jaded quite quickly. And these, a lot of people, they put a great deal of love into these. I want to get them to you to make sure they've
got to have their full 15 minutes of fame to get their chance of prize. Now, apples and apple juice, as much as I agree with you, they're very good. I particularly like apples themselves because the fiber in the apple can physically clean around your mouth. Yeah. I know it's going to sound weird, but I find white bread is quite good for that. Because you get it in, you're chewing it, and it's like a tasteless toothbrush, if I could put it that way. And I use that at the Great Taste Awards as well to bring up. But what I've got here, which you'll be very familiar with, is Membrillo.
Nice.
So I've got a nice little piece. This is the classic Membrillo. Membrillo means quince in Spain, but this is more than just quince. This is a preserved quince, whether it's a high pectin log or brick. And I find this quite good because it's got the acidity you're talking about, but it's suitable for a cheese board. It's not a professional tool. It's an enjoyable tool. If I can.
Yeah. I know what you're meaning. Otherwise, you could have a beer.
Man, Mr. Boy.
But look at this Doom Bar, because I've had quite a day on it already. This is Doom Bar Zero. It's an amber ale. I know that goes against all your principles, but I have been trying some of the low alcohol beers during lockdown and ciders. There's actually some really good 1% ciders which are around. And again, just talking about that acidity. So for me, if I'm having a day off it, if I get a decent beer, and the best ones so far have been Nanny Steak from Brewdog, really hoppy. And I know you're shaking your head. Another one is from Adnams. It's their ghost ship.
I'm going to be honest, Nigel. It does look like we've scraped you off the street a little bit. But the principle that you're talking about there is getting the mouth cleaned out between two, without interrupting the pleasure of either the cheese that's gone before or the cheese that's about to come after. I mean, do you ever do things like muscatel grapes or that kind of thing? Yeah,
celery I find really good. Celery is a great palate cleanser, but yeah, you again, you don't. It doesn't look like you. Some people just don't like it. But it does keep.
For some reason, entirely personal. I loathe it. Just gonna get it on the table. Me and celery do not get on. I think it's. Apparently it's negative calories. I don't know whether that's a real thing. But apparently it takes more to digest it, and that goes against my principles as well. So I understand that people do love celery. So what we're saying is you need tools. You cannot just be a really good judge and go from cheese to cheese to cheese to cheese. You need that sort of listamine moment. You need a mouthwash, and you need to use, whether it's beer, membrillo, or slices of apple. And I think that when people are looking at whether it's Cheeseboard, they should really be focusing on filling their Cheeseboard to make it look really cool with all these palate cleansing tools, so that each cheese is segregated and allowed its own space.
Yeah. I must say I love grapes with cheese as well, because they work in harmony with the cheese. They don't counteract it. And some cheese biscuits are great, but sometimes they can slightly get in the way of the cheese for me. As a kid, we used to call at home. We ate quite a lot of cheese at home, which is always good. And we were things like Mrs. Kirkham's, crumbly Lancashires, Yorkshires. There you go. Keep an eye out for you, Charlie. And
it's my Cyclops.
Yeah, but it's very good. But Pierce Brosnan was in that film, the remake of the one that Steve McQueen was in.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
Senior moment. We'll come back to
it. Jesus, I really love that movie too. But this is, I have to say, this
Thomas
is
Crown
exactly
Affair. Thomas Crown Affair.
These are the Peter's Yard biscuits, which I love. And that other element of coming onto a cheese board or whatever is that crunch, that break, that allows you to. But your point is exactly right. Don't mess with the cheese. This should be separate but different.
And the nice thing about those biscuits, they're not too strong either. They actually do, and they don't dictate or dominate.
But I love the way they consistently crunch. It's my favorite dip into Gorgonzola Dolce, but it's working extremely well with the Baron by God.
I have to say as well, Charlie, but I quite often don't eat cheese at the end of a meal because I've had all the other flavors that have gone there. So quite often in the afternoon, again, it's a real Yorkshire thing, is that we would have cheese with cake, with fruit cake. It was just one of those things that we'd always have the harmony, or with apple pie. So quite often we would have it in the afternoon, like a high tea, and that's we'd have it. Or sometimes if I was working at the end of the morning, like certainly in lockdown, at about 11, 12 o'clock, you have a breakfast earlier, I would have a piece of cheese. And that's whenever I do any tasting, and I've been doing some podcasts for Britannia championing artisan food and drink producers, which has just been lucky me to do that for them, the Britannia ovens. But I often taste like 11 o'clock because that's when my palate is at its most appreciative, most sensitive. It's getting ready for a lunch.
Why do you say 11 o'clock?
Why? Because I just love it. That's when my palate is at its most appreciative and ready to taste. So if I've only got, say, 5 or 6 items rather than 60, like we might do if we're doing a Great Taste Awards or in the World Cheese Awards, that's when I can really do them justice.
That's interesting. So you think your palate has a sensitivity change during the day, so you're peaking?
Without doubt.
Oh, interesting.
When I used to do wine lists as a young wine merchant, we also sold cigars, and I loved a Havana cigar. And if I was going to picture me in the old big country house we worked from in Yorkshire, is that I'd be writing up the wine lists and I would have a glass. And I was only in early 20s, but, I was an old man in the making because I would have an Oloroso sherry and a nice big Romeo and Julieta cigar at 11 o'clock, because that's when I really appreciated all the flavors. And it's a brilliantly happy memory.
I can see why. I can see why.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring attention to this one from James. Apple pie without Lancashire cheese is like a kiss without a squeeze. Graham Kirkman said. I do agree. My particular favourite is come Christmas is mincemeat with Stilton or Dorset Blue Vinny. Really good. We've drifted into matching again, which is great because it's a lot of fun. And I have to say, Eve, I really recommend fruit cake or even a fruit loaf. You can slice a fruit loaf, really good, particularly with blue cheese, but pretty much any of the crumblies go extremely well. And that's the kind of thing you can heavily experiment with on your cheese boards. A little bit of fruit loaf, particularly if it combines that, because a fruit loaf has a certain dessert element. It's highly sweet. It's got nice texture, and so it really combines that dessert and cheese moment. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, no, all of those and lovely combinations, but fruit with cheese, but fruit cake, Christmas cake, anything like apple pie, I mean, but again, you need that fruity element. You need, again, the slight acidity of it just to cut through the richness of a cheese. And like you and I, I've probably been eating a lot of cheeses. We've been doing a lot of Zooms with cheese tastings. And it is just doing it so you can, it's a bit like a really good chocolate. Sometimes you don't need that much of a cheese just to be satiated, to really enjoy it. Because otherwise, if you have too much, you don't appreciate it.
I agree. I mean, talking about cheeses, I've got Graham Kirkham's Lancashire here, which I picked up today, and he is tasting delicious, right? But it is a fact that there isn't a cheese on this board that is anything like it. It is in flavor terms and texture, flavor, the whole combination, it's an outlier. It's an outlier. And I have this sort of top tip that if you have an outlier on your board, give it company. So in this case, a little bit of fruitcake. Otherwise, it's going to feel a bit isolated, and the people on the table are going to focus on the sort of the cool kids and the poor guy in the corner. So support, keep warm something that's a bit different compared to the other cheeses.
Yeah, it's a nice image. Keep it in your mouth, Charlie, as well, And but great story about Graham, about Kirkham's as well, because with Lancashire cheese is so labour intensive that during the last two wars, they banned it being made in Lancashire because it took up too much energy and resources to make it. Really? It's such an intense process they go through. And what's great is Graham's mum, Mrs. Kirkham, is still very much with us, and we got her at the Great Taste Awards a couple of years ago when I made it my Heritage Award.
Are you sure his mum is still with us? I don't really want to have this kind of
Ruth. Well, she was 18 months ago anyway. So if not Ruth, I wish you up there. But I think she's still pretty chirpy and picker and chipper. Yeah.
Well, on that,
she certainly came to the dinner with her mate.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. Let's have a quick.
If we've killed you off, Ruth, I'm really sorry. Yeah.
No, we must be respectful.
Point is this. Here you go.
The lead blue. Yes, no, someone else. Someone else. That was very good. So everybody, thank you, Nigel, for coming on. Thank you for bringing your expertise to the table. We will I will certainly be following you on the virtual Cheese Awards. We will post it. So follow us on social media, follow us on Twitter, follow us on all that kind of stuff. I'll put some links underneath this, whatever it's called, this YouTube experience. So people can get involved in the virtual Cheese Awards. And hopefully we will see the best cheese of 2020. It's one showcase moment. We will see that next week. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Week on Saturday, 11 till 4:30.
11 till 4:30. Right. I'm going to wave goodbye. We're going to end the broadcast there. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed talking about cheese. See you next week. We will be talking judging and how it works and getting some judge along. So there can be packs of cheese. Oh, I should say this actually. There's packs of cheese that you can get hold of. We're going to do a judging. We're hopefully with Tanny Gill. He hasn't confirmed yet, but hopefully and we're going to do judge with some judges and learn a little bit about how it works. All right. Love to you all. See you next week. Let's end.